YouTubers, Tasman here bringing you the new episode of Learn JavaScript with using or with, I don't know, it's going to take me a while to let that flow, but learning JavaScript using or with Foundry VTT. And hopefully you watched the previous episode, which is episode 0. If you've had a chance, it would be very, very beneficial also to go check out my little series that I just uploaded from my old channel to this channel on programming logic, because that will help understand a lot of kind of not syntax but structure for programming. But we're going to jump right in. And like I said in my previous episode, these first bunch of episodes might feel kind of like, well, the only way we're considered really learning Java using Foundry or with Foundry is the fact that we're doing it as a macro in Foundry. But later on, I promise you that we will actually use Foundry more in depth. But I think it was Lombardi that said, become brilliant at the basics before you move on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to learn the basics and hopefully become brilliant at the basics. So when we move on and we actually get into where we're looking at, characters and all this fun stuff in Foundry, that knowledge has been reinforced enough that everything just makes sense. So in our first, or episode 0, we created this little template. We talked about what modules I have installed in Foundry that will make life a little easier. Some others are just like the D&D Beyond importer. That's more for future reference. We don't need it right now. The big ones that you would want for sure right now would definitely be the ACE library, because that's a requirement of the macro editor, the sidebar macros, and that's it. So those 3 are all you really will need to follow along. These other ones, the tidy UI just makes it so the settings and stuff are a little nicer. Shared compendium is one that I actually teach you how to make in one of my previous episodes of Foundry, where we actually create this so that you can have compendiums that are shared between worlds. And then of course this is for importing stuff from D&D Beyond. So really not needed for what we're doing other than what we said, those 3. So first thing we're going to do is jump right in. We're going to go to macros, and as you can see, here's our little template, and it's also here. We're going to create a folder in here, and we're going to call this the fundamentals. FUNDAMENTALS. So fundamental, something like that. We can give the folder a color if we want. I don't know, maybe fundamentals, kind of a bluish color. The text default is always white, so you don't want a really light color because you won't be able to see. So if we kind of pick a nice darker blue here and then click here and boom, we have, wait, where did I type fundamentals at? FUNDAMENTALS. Thought I typed it there. Maybe I didn't. So this is going to be where our fundamentals, this is kind of the different stages of our JavaScript development. By the way, as I've said before, if I say Java, I mean JavaScript. Just so you know, a little fun fact here is that JavaScript is no more related to Java than, say, Java is to C++. They kind of share a syntax here and there, but really JavaScript was named JavaScript mostly because Java was the big thing, and so it was more generate hype for JavaScript. The actual name for JavaScript, I believe, is ECMAScript, which is why when you go download or you go look at the change logs and stuff, it'll be called ES, 16, 17, 2022, 2021, so on and so forth. So, like I said, if I say Java, I totally mean JavaScript. There's no point in this series that we actually will be talking about Java. So now that we've got that out of the way and we have our fundamentals folder, we're going to go ahead and click this little plus here, and we're going to create a new macro, our very first macro. And we're going to call this values and variables. V-A-L-U-E-S, values. What? Where is it not typing? V-A-L-U-E-S, and then the ampersand, and V-A-R-I-A-B-L-E-S. And it is going to be a script, not a chat macro. And we're going to go ahead and say create. So we will now have this. If you do not have this black screen, it might be because your default is to go the regular. I highly recommend doing the black one. If it's not black, if it's something else, but it has like a line number or something like that, then that's all set up in settings, configure settings, and then go to ACE library. All your different settings are in there. The reason mine is blackish gray like this is because I'm using the Dracula theme. I've also increased the font size to 18. I think the default is 14 or 16. And that's simply just so you can see it on the screen better. I do record these videos in 1280 by 720. Just so that, you know, when you make it full screen, you can actually see it. Some people like record these multi-screened, you know, video of their thing, and then when you maximize it, it only goes one screen, it only gets a little bigger. I want it to be beneficial for you to be able to see it, so I'm kind of taking a hit by recording it, so everything's really crammed, but I think in the long run it's going to be better for you guys when you're actually trying to view this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just move this box over here. I want to leave a chunk over here because we also hit the F12 key on our keyboard, and we'll go into developer tools. Wow, did I nail that or what? Look at that lineup. Whew, perfect. If you're not seeing this that says all this fun stuff here, make sure that up here you're on console, and then you can click this little not symbol to clear the thing. So excuse me. So as I've said previously, the very first thing I always stick in there is use script, or strict, not script, S-T-R-I-C-T. This will help JavaScript know to be a little more finicky on some stuff. The next thing I always do is stick in my call to my function, which is going to be my actual macro. And I usually call it main. You can call it whatever you want, but you just need to make sure that whatever this is what the actual function is. So, and then we're going to go ahead and declare our function. So we're going to type F-U-N-C-T-I function main. So this would be the part that needs to be whatever that is right there. And then we're going to do an open curly brace. And when we hit enter, it'll automatically create us a closing curly brace. And we can stick a semicolon there to get rid of the little thing. All right, so now that we've done that, let's talk about values. So values in any programming language is basically bits of data that have a type to them. For example, if I do a quote and I say hello, this is a string value. Now, with strings, they're a little different because you actually have three types. You also have a single tick or a single quote, and we could say H-E-L-L-O there, and that is also a string. I'm going to put a comma here so it probably doesn't argue. So we have double quote, we have single quote, and then we also have one that is the tick, which is shared with the tilde above the tab key. So if we do that, now we have this kind, and this is called a string literal. The neat thing about this is we can actually embed variables, which we're going to be talking about soon, inside of this thing. The other nice thing is if I'm using quotes, either single or double, within my string, I don't have to escape them, and I don't have to be really careful. For example, if I were in here and say something like, I said, and then a quote, H-E-L-L-O, you'll see that this is going to throw a lot of errors because hello, for one, it's trying to figure out what kind of code this is. It's expecting this to be something that JavaScript understands, a function, a method, or something that JavaScript understands. So what's happening here is this quote is being ended here. Then it's expecting some kind of variable or something. Oops, I didn't mean to move you. And then this quote here is just a spare quote. Technically, it should be 2 if we were doing it right, because we said hello and then we close it. So then we have another string right here. So JavaScript is not happy with us because we've done this. Now, we can do this if we use a backslash before the 2 quotes that we want actually output. And now it looks at these as escape characters that JavaScript is saying, oh, okay, you want me to print the quotation mark. So it will go ahead and print the quotation mark, and everything is happy here again. So if we do a console log on this, console.log, which we learned about in our last video, and we go ahead and hit execute, you'll see I said hello, and now it's happy. And then it says hello, and maybe we'll change this so they're a little different. We'll say, hey there. And maybe this one can be hi. So all 3 of these values are strings, and JavaScript is more than happy to output a string to the console without whining. Now, if we got rid of these, as I was showing you, now JavaScript is going to definitely have an issue with us, and it's going to throw up an error. Actually, it didn't throw up an error. I'm not sure why. Technically, it should have. But you'll notice it's not outputting what we want. So it didn't actually throw up an error, but it's also not the expected behavior that we want. And the reason for that is because it's looking at this as a string. It has no idea what this is. Here's our next string, here's the next string, and here's the next string. So that's one way we can use escape characters to get out of having to do that. Another thing you can do is, if you know you're going to have a quote inside your value, you can actually just do it in here, and we could say like hello there. And because it's inside these single quotes, now it's going to be happy and not have any issues. So as it outputs the there right there. And vice versa with the single tick here. Let's say for whatever reason we have the word can't. Here, JavaScript is going to say, I need to delete that one. Here, JavaScript is going to say, oh wait, this T is outside of the string, because here's the opening, here's the closing, here's some T that's just random, and then we have a new opening, and there's not a closing. So if we run this one, let's go and clear it. You'll see once again, we don't get anything. If we go to the no mess, oh, I was not shown, maybe that's what it was. So as you can see here, it's saying that we have a missing, it doesn't know exactly how to handle that. It's kind of expecting the close parenthesis, because technically this parenthesis is inside the start of a new string. And all of a sudden, the next thing it detects is the closing of our body. So it's saying, hey, you're missing your closed parenthesis. And I don't know how to handle this. So one way you can fix this is anytime you know you're going to have a single quote, you want to encapsulate the whole thing in double quotes, or vice versa. If you have a double quote, you want to encapsulate the whole thing in single quotes. Now, once again, we also have an escape character with the single tick or the single quote. And now, once again, Java should be plenty happy, I think. Let me just make sure. I think, yeah, Java should be happy now. So there you go. So now we actually have our can't with the apostrophe in it, and then our hi. Now, the nice thing about this one, that's the string literal, and part of it we can't really go into right now because we're just talking about actual values. Is you can also incorporate variables directly in this without having to, do any concatenation and weird stuff. So the neat thing with this one is you can have both quotes and single quotes in it, and it's not going to care. It knows that this is the opening, this is the closing, everything in between is a string. So if we go here, you'll see we have hi with a double quote and a single quote. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, one other thing I want to show you is if you're ever wondering what a value is. So here we have this big value here, and we're just gonna let's get rid of all the previous stuff. Let's just use this hi for now. So if you ever want to know, there is an operator that you can use in front of this that will tell you exactly what type of value it is or what type of data it is, and that is type of. So if we go typeof and then space, this will tell you what the value next to it is. So now if we hit execute, we won't get all that info. We'll actually just get, hey, right next to me, to the right of me is a string, right? If we stick a number in there, it will come back saying a number, right? And so forth. Speaking of number, that is our next type. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to go make this so we have some clear stuff. So we're going to say ATLLO, just really quick right there. Then we're going to do a comma. So the way we separate these or do a next one is we can do a comma. You can also use the addition sign as a concatenator. So it will concatenate one string with another string. And we're going to go in more depth with that. So we could actually do this and say, how are you, right? And we can also, like I said, do comma and say, I am fine. So one thing I want to point out here real quick, when we run this, you'll see it says string and then instantly starts with how are you. So the hello's not in there because that's what we're saying, what type is this. The plus is simply saying put whatever is here, whatever this value evaluates to, next to this one, but you'll notice there is no space. It's not automatically going to add a space if you use the plus. So that would mean we need to go ahead and stick a space in there. And then when we do the comma, it actually does automatically add a space. So you'll notice here we have you space, I am fine, even though here and here there is no space. So if you use the concatenation operator, which is the plus, it will actually not add a space, and sometimes that might be what you want. For example, if I was to say my name is Tasman, let's do a comma here real quick, and let's say let's say hi to Tasman. So we would do T for ZZ in quotes like so. Whoops, I missed the first one. Then we could do plus and do a, let's do single ticks. It doesn't matter. M for NN. And then we'll go ahead and do another plus here since we have that space. What this is going to do is, because we're using the plus, it's going to put these two together as if there's no space there. But here we already have the space, and here we have a comma, so everything should look good. It'll say string Tasman, how are you? I'm fine. Right? So let's go ahead, hit execute, and there we go. String Tasman with no spaces. How are you? I am fine. All right, so this is basically our string, right? The next thing we have is a number. Now, if you do know other programming languages, you will probably notice that, I guess you're going to notice this more when we get into variables and stuff. But whether we have, say, a value that is a decimal, a negative, a positive number, it's all grouped under number. In other programming languages, such as Java, C++, C#, and stuff like that, you actually have to declare what a variable type is going to be. So there's a integer, there's a float, which is your decimal, there's double, which is decimal in another language, there's unsigned integer, which gives you things that are both negative and positive. There is whole numbers, and so on and so forth. JavaScript lumps that all into one thing. So if we do typeof and we say, let's say 4.586, I don't know why, let's just do that. If we go clear this and hit execute, you'll see that is a number. If I do, well, let's do a negative 0.0.4 blah blah blah, right? Go and clear that, hit that, still just a number. Let's go ahead and make it a positive number, 349. Still just a number. Negative, still just a number. Now there is a way, because this number value only can hold a number that's so big. But then we actually have numbers in the quadrillions or whatever. And if you know you're going to be working with a really big number, or in JavaScript, you run into something that says that the number value is too high or anything along those lines, one of the newer versions, I think it was it ES20 16, 18, something like that, they introduced a new type of number that you can actually tell it or let it know what type of number you want. So let's say we want a really big number and I don't want to type out a big number. I can just come in here and type my number. For example, in this case it's 10, and I'm just going to put an N at the end of it. And this is going to tell it that this is not just a number, this is a big number. So if we hit execute, you'll actually see now this is actually a big integer. And once again, it also works with our negatives. So still big int, it's a negative. It works with decimals. Actually, maybe it doesn't work with decimals. I never tried that one before. Let's see if it's anything specific here. Invalid unexpected token. It might not work with decimals. I thought it did though. It doesn't seem to like decimals. So, whole numbers only. So anyway, let's continue on. So just to give an example, we're just going to do, let's do 1337, something like that, you know, leet, if you understand leet speak. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe a comma, negative 12, comma, and 3.95 or something like that. So all of these are going to be a number, and it's not going to have any issue with any of these being a number. The next value type, I guess we might as well put the big int one in here. console dot log parenthesis, and we'll do typeof, and how do I want to do this? Let's just do our 10 in, and then we'll just do a really big number. It's not actually trying to store this anywhere, so it's not really going to care. Let's see. We'll see if that works. It should. Yeah, we just got a scientific number out of it. But as you can see, that is a big int. Actually, we'd want to put an N there to make sure we know it's a big int. So hit execute, and there you go. Now we have our big int right there. In fact, it didn't actually truncate it or anything. So we have our big int, right? Then we have what's called a Boolean. So if you've ever done programming, you definitely know what a Boolean is. Boolean is either a true value or a false value. And we'll be going more in depth on what truth values are and false values. But basically a Boolean, if we go in here and we say console.log, we might not even get to the variables this episode. So console.log, and we're going to say type not type of, comma, and true, and then we're going to stick a comma, and we're just going to flase. So true and false here. If we hit execute, you'll see that it is a Boolean and false is a Boolean as well as true. In fact, maybe we should also say comma true. That way we actually see both of our Boolean types right there. Kind of like we did up here. All right, so moving on, we also have some types that act, how would I say this? They're kind of the absence of a type. So we have one called undefined, and undefined is basically a variable that or a value. Actually, can't really have a value. That undefined is the value, but undefined usually is assigned to a variable that doesn't exist. So the variable's there, but we haven't actually assigned anything to it. Therefore, it becomes undefined. So we're just going to represent that by doing console.log and do type of typeof undefined. So undefined, and obviously that's just undefined. There's no other value that can be, because it's an undefined value. So if we run this, go and close that, you'll see undefined is definitely undefined. And we have another one called null. Now null and undefined are kind of similar. Undefined is probably more common, but null is a variable that is defined but is missing a value. So undefined is a variable that refers to something that doesn't exist, which is kind of missing a value. And it isn't defined to be anything, right? Where a null is a variable that is defined but is missing a value. So if we come in here and we do console.log to our parenthesis typeof null. Oh man, I didn't hit that quick enough. I'll have to edit that out, hopefully. Excuse me. And then say null. So if I hit execute, there you go. You'll see that is, now null also is technically an object, which we're going to be talking about right now-ish. Although we're at 28 minutes, I don't know. No. I'm wondering. So basically what we have here, and we're going to go ahead and stick a comment. I don't remember. I think I talked about comments. So you can have a single line comment by doing 2 forward slashes, or a multi-line comment by doing a slash and a star. And then when it's over, you do a slash and a star. And that way, you know, you can have as many lines as you want for your comment. If it's only a single line, then you can just do these double ticks right here, the double slashes. So these that we've talked about right now are primitive data types. And I think we might call this episode good here. And then in the next episode, we're going to get into the complex data types, which are well, there's actually one more that I forgot to mention. We're not really going to go into it, but I'm just going to mention it. It's called symbol. And it's kind of tricky to try and describe it without knowing a lot more technical stuff about the programming language. So we're going to kind of just not use that one right now. And if it comes up later, we will definitely talk about it. But the next types we're actually going to talk about are called complex data types. So complex data types. And there are basically 4 of them that we're going to go over. And we're going to later on, once again, go into more in-depth detail on those at a later date. So I think this is probably a good point at this point. Now, one thing I would like to actually point out about values is in programming, values alone are kind of pointless. I would liken it to reading a book. What's there is there. There is no variance, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's no user interaction. If I output hello here or Tasman, it will every single time I hit this execute, it's going to execute the exact same thing. There's absolutely no variance. So that's where variables come in that will be, I think we might be able to get into those in the next episode, along with the complex data types. So I think we're going to end it here. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below. Aside from that, comment, like, subscribe. Click that little notification bell. Helps me tremendously on YouTube to get my channel out there. Aside from that, check out my Discord, my other channels. Tell other people about my channel. I'm checking it out. If they like what they see, they can sub. We can grow the channel. It'll be awesome. And that is it, my friends. Until next time, I'll be seeing you later. Bye.